finally, we're back. And it has been a journey. All people that have been asking, where have I been? Where have I been? Where have I been? See for yourself. So I'm sure you've noticed that the setup is different, and that's because I moved back and changed continents. So you can guess what country this is. So getting equipment and setting up also took a while. The amazing part about this is that I thought I was back, and then NYC happened. So let's pick up where we left off. And I know some people have forgotten what probably was said in the last episode, so we're gonna do a little recap so that we can remember. We're going to be talking about a specific time period in my life that was one of the hardest. We're going to be talking about the God moments in that specific period. Now, the specific period I'm talking about was the time I failed in Covenant University. Yeah, that's right. Beauty and brains, but she failed that. Whatever you are afraid of, you give power to control how you think, how you act, and even what you say. And a God moment for me, she said, failure does not define you. Now, the reason why I'm emphasizing the power of community is because if I kept myself isolated, I would have never known these things. And because I had a flawed perspective, if God wanted to tell me, I wouldn't be able to receive it because of my perspective. So I'm guessing by now you have watched the recap. The last episode in the middle of a series where I was talking about failure and how God led me through that, and the God moments I experienced through that. Now, the beautiful part about this particular episode is because the title of this episode is a God moment in retrospect, and this particular episode is about a time that I didn't fully realize till after the season was over, and I looked back and I realized that wait, God came through. And I feel like we all have experiences like that, where is when we look back and we truly focus and look out for God, that we see that God actually did so much in this particular time for me. That's why it's important to count our blessings and think of the things we are thankful for. When you actually look out for things you should be thankful for, you realize that God has done so much more than what you know. Now, a God moment in retrospect. I remember the beginning of this period, this season, and I remember praying to God that I do not want to have clashing courses, because it was such a burden for anybody that did, especially in a school like CU. Like, things are already rigorous, and then having clashing courses just make it harder, because there's obviously a stigma with people that take on courses again. So the burden of having to go through that was just painful to me. So I remember praying to God that, God, please, I do not want clashing courses. I do not want my courses to clash. And I prayed this prayer because I didn't want to miss out on anything or be at a disadvantage in either course. Also, low-key, because I did not want people to know. I didn't want people to know, and I wanted to keep my pride. You know, I didn't want people to know. I didn't want to have to go through the piercing eyes of people that maybe would have esteemed me in a particular way, and the confusion on their face, seeing how they look confused. Just that feeling is not what anybody wants to experience. Okay, and the third reason why I prayed that prayer is because I don't want to be embarrassed. There's a way they treat people that carry on courses again,
and how they just, I feel like some lecturers assume you're stupid, or some people assume that you're stupid, and if the courses are clashing, you would have to come and tell them that you have to spend 1 hour here and probably the other hour in the next class, having to explain that over and over again, because not one lecturer is going to teach you throughout the course. It could be 3 lecturers having to explain that over and over again, and most lecturers might not have known you before, so they might not know whether you're a serious student or whether you're not. So, but because you're carrying on a course, there's this assumption that you are serious. So I don't want anybody to shout at me. God, I feel like I would have cried. Please don't shout at me. So I don't want to be embarrassed. That was the 3rd reason why I prayed that prayer. Lo and behold, my courses were clashing. Because I had broken, very much so. But when God doesn't answer my prayer, it's not, God is all-knowing, and his plans for me are of good and not of evil. So it's important to have that perspective when you are praying or believing God for something. So if God did not give me what I want, that means there is a purpose in it. So at this particular time, I was in a season where I don't know, I feel like people had put me on such a pedestal, because for some reason people thought I was perfect to some extent, or that this girl, everything is just sweet for everything is dandy. And so yes, at some point I began to feed off of that, of how people's perception of me, and not really who I was, which is very damaging. Why? Because the perception of people can change. So if it changes, what happens to the essence of who you are, if it is based on how people think of you? That is why it is so important that we base who we think English. That's why it's so important that our perception of ourselves is in God alone and in Christ. Why? Because it is constant, number 1. Number 2, because it is truth. God was teaching me that I am who I am, regardless of what I am facing and regardless of what people think of me. Because definitely at that moment in time where I had to walk into classes with people that all knew me, because chapel screen all over my face, with people that all knew me, their perceptions will obviously change, because it's obviously not perfection. You can obviously see people's facial expressions. You can obviously see the reluctance to which lecturers talk to you when you have to explain to them that you're going for another course. Like, you can see it, but that would not affect you when you are grounded in who God has called you to be and in who God says you are. So another beautiful part of this God moment is that the call of my prayer was answered. And the call of my prayer was that I didn't want to miss out on anything, and I don't want to be at a disadvantage. So even though the courses clashed, they never really clashed, because, let me explain. So let's say one course will span for 2 hours and one will span for 1 hour. I would obviously go for the one that had the first hour. So after finishing that class, I would come for the rest of the second hour for the second course. And the beautiful part about it is that when I'm coming for the second course, that would be the same time the lecturer will be entering. And this happened so many times. Like, there will be times where I'll come for the second hour in the other course, and the lecturer is gave an exercise and left them, so like he wouldn't be in the class throughout. So I never missed out on anything. So courses did not technically. We have come to the end of episode. You know when you don't do an episode in a while, you've forgotten the number of episodes. But this is episode 5, and the title of this episode is a God moment in retrospect. Many more to come. Bye guys.